I just don't think you can believe everything they say, really.
The lie makes stories up.
Yeah.
Some of them just show you what they want to show you, what they think will sell.
No, I never really thought about it that much. Kind of hear it and just leave it in the back of your mind. So
I just don't really think any of them are trustworthy.
Yeah, I feel like reputation has a lot to do with things. For example, right now Fox is known for being they're very lax with the racism.
take it with a grain of salt, pretty much.
Their point of view, and that's what they're really trying to report on, rather than reporting like the truth, you know?
Yeah, I never believe anything unless I see it. How's that?
Journalism. It provides the public with what they deserve to know. According to the Pew Research Center, nearly 30% of U.S. adults have little to no trust in the information from national news organizations. How do journalists today build this trust when they have to combat issues like fake news, propaganda, and the world of fraudulent deception that surrounds us?
My name is Tom Cullen, and I work at the Storm Lake Times as a reporter.
The Storm Lake Times is a small family-owned newspaper published twice weekly in northwest Iowa. Its editor won a Pulitzer Prize for editorial writing in 2017, and he did so based on the tough investigative reporting of Tom Cullen.
When we define good journalism, again, it has to do with telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I know that's a little bit of a, trite, but that's kind of the point. Building trust with people, especially if they know you're from the newspaper, is something I have to deal with on a regular basis. Whenever I call people, they always ask, well, who are you? What do you want to it's like, well, what are you interested in this about? And frankly, the fake news era makes that even more difficult. Yeah, so it's always difficult to convince people that, you know what, look, I'm on your side.
So, what is fake news? According to Merriam-Webster, fake news is frequently used to describe a political story which is seen as damaging to an agency, entity, or person. However, fake news is by no means restricted to politics and is often associated with general news. As indicated in a 2018 American Press Institute survey, just under half, or 44% of adults say their trust in the news has decreased in the last year. Most people don't know how to discern what fake news is, so a large majority chooses to write all news off as a lie, creating issues for journalists.
So I thought, again, there's always been this push and pull between the media and government at all levels, but this particular flavor is, I guess, more brazen than ever. And in that sense, we have to do as best we can to report the facts and report them accurately. And if that means that people are angry with us, so be it. Probably the most challenging part is the shrinking newsrooms, honestly. Having worked in the industry for a few years now, you can't step anywhere else in another newsroom to know that without the first story being that it's shrunk over the years or shrank. And it's very sad what's happened to a lot of these places, and that this has to do with the crisis of readership. Frankly, not everyone knows what's going on with county government, city government. People, for whatever reason, aren't reading about the fact that their tax rates are going up or down, and that's a challenge that we need to respond to as journalists. You know, whether it's circulation, whether it's people in the news desk, whether it's people in an editorial. We need to respond to the fact to get people back into the newspaper. We need to get the newspaper back in the center of people's lives to make it essential to people. That, I think, is the biggest challenge, is to redefine our roles in the 21st century.
Tom's father and Storm Lake Times editor Art Cullen has also experienced these struggles.
Well, starting and maintaining and sustaining a newspaper, that's no small feat, believe me. A lot of 80 and 100-hour weeks trying to keep that paper alive. And we're still trying to keep it alive in the era of fake news and declining faith in institutions like the media. And that's where people make up their own realities, and they don't feel that they need to be encumbered by facts that are in opposition to their own point of view. And so that's the most frustrating thing, is just putting out a great, honest newspaper and then watching people walk by it in ignorance. So my greatest accomplishment is starting that newspaper, and my greatest failure is that over half the community doesn't care to look at it.
Tim Gallagher, named Assistant Director of Communications in 2019 at Buena Vista University, worked at the Times as soon as he got out of school. He later went on to become a celebrated columnist at the region's biggest daily newspaper, the Sioux City Journal.
I'm aware that there are people that don't trust journalists, and I'm aware that there are politicians, and the president throws around this enemy of the people, label. And I also know that there are networks, entire networks, that are skewed one way or the other. I get that. I work hard so that people do trust me, and I don't want to violate that, because once you do, it's, good luck ever going back. During the last election cycle, I remember coming into the Donald Trump rally and how he helped open it by looking at the line of cameras in the back and telling everybody present that, those people back there, they're evil. You can't trust them. They lie, and, people booed. And, at that time, I had probably 25 years in the business of trying to tell people's stories as accurately as I could, and it kind of made me feel bad that that's the way some of the public regards the work that we do.
According to a 2019 article from the Freedom Forum Institute, student journalists are needed more than ever to support freedom of the press. Criticisms involving news media have impacted students' interests in journalism. When one's future profession is attacked, it can be discouraging to keep producing stories to serve a non-receptive community. How can a student confidently pursue a career in journalism when so many are questioning the legitimacy of this field? According to a 2018 article, Mitchell Cook, editor of the University of Memphis newspaper, faced criticism from his reports on sexual assault. Faulted by administration for being too young or inexperienced to report on the topic, Cook's outlook on his future in journalism was potentially damaged by their malignant comments. Student journalists combat not only their own universities in reporting on subjects such as these, but the public community as a whole. Additionally, the Pew Research Center shares that news employment has been declining, with newsrooms being hit the hardest. Even with digitally based news sources showing some growth, a greater loss in positions has not been enough to combat it. Furthermore, from 2008 to 2017, newsroom employment in the U.S. dropped by 23%. So why would young people be attracted to a field in which they are named the enemy of the people by politicians? Guy Tannenbaum and Mason McGrew are student journalists at BVU who experience the pushback of this field, but they share their reasons for why they continue to push forward.
I think what makes it rewarding really is it's a labor of love. It's so much work. And I don't think a lot of people understand how much work it really takes to be a journalist. I think the role of fake news nowadays is a large one. I think that the American populace as a whole, and even the global population, it's hard to discern what's real and what's fake nowadays, with people creating fake information to look like a credible news source. And as journalists, it's our job to keep reporting the facts no matter what, no matter who tries to make it seem fake, to try and control the thought of the American public. Journalists report the truth, the facts, and that's about it.
I think it's messy. I think the current state of the perception of journalism in the basic public, I guess, is dangerous, but it's also a great opportunity for student journalists or people learning journalism now to really just produce the best content that you can and tell the best stories to your ability without people being scared or concerned about it.
Yeah,
just be 100% honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Student journalists are taking on the big stories alongside professionals. Some even compete with them in reporting serious news, such as the Parkland shooting. The aforementioned 2019 Freedom Forum article revealed that student journalists were planning news coverage in real time while the shots were being fired. However, these journalists still face the same roadblocks as the pros. Autumn McLean is the opinion editor of The Tack, BVU's leading news organization. McLean has had her fair share of struggles when producing stories. One of her recent journalistic endeavors about the questionable departure of a BV music professor stands out in particular.
The challenges I faced in writing the Bertrand article were specifically the fact that we have a policy here in place at BVU that prevents faculty, both former and present, from speaking on the matter. So that was a very difficult challenge to overcome in trying to find the truth for this article and to get enough information for it to be published. Yeah, it was a challenge that I did overcome. I think it's important to be a student journalist because we have to protect our power of free speech. We have to be a voice for the student body. We have to be able to spread that truth.
Training the next generation of journalism professionals, knowing they'll face heightened public distrust, is just one challenge in the broader question of how we navigate the complex relationship between the press and the people. Tom's role as a local journalist has made him realize how vital journalism is to society.
It's a stalwart institution. I mean, we need it, right? Who else is going to cover your sewer rates? Who else is going to cover whether Storm Lake Soccer won the state tournament? Who's going to cover when BV men's basketball wins the D3 national tournament? You know, it's something that's irreplaceable, and it actually goes back to the founding fathers. I mean, they said it multiple times. I mean, the importance of local news. So that's my belief on it. Frankly, is that it's a stalwart institution that. Struggling, albeit, it's something that I view as irreplaceable.
So I think all journalism starts with the question why. Good journalism, I think, changes people's perspective on the world and prompts them to action, to vote or to show up at a city council meeting and make their opinions known. I think that's the best journalism, that information that moves people to action.
When it comes to the future, I mean, I don't know what journalism will look like. What I do know is that people will always care about what their tax rates are, whether the water's polluted, whether the schools are good. I mean, that kind of thing. People always care about their government. People always care about their neighbors. People always care about the world, right? So there's always going to be a natural demand for that. It depends on how we want to package it and what role I'll play in it. I don't know, but I just know I'm not leaving it here anytime soon.
Even though the future is uncertain, even though the hours are terrible and the pay is bad, and they keep laying people off from the news industry, it's still the funnest job in the world. And it's still worth it. We'd like to think we're still fighting the good fight. And so journalism's important, and it's important that people study journalism. And it's important that young people like yourself are interested in journalism because it is the foundation of an informed electorate. And I'm still corny enough to believe that.